do you mind just sharing your story with us?
Yes, okay, so let's start from the beginning. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents had met doing missions trips. My dad was a pastor, so that was all very central all growing up. And then I had an older brother that also had a really good connection with his faith, and so we just grew up with that. I was a really happy child, but I was really high-strung when I was a kid. Little things got to me a lot. The way I responded to certain situations was just very kind of panicky and nervous, and not normally the way that kids would react, especially around men and things like that. I was just a very nervous child.
Can I ask, when did you first notice this?
When we talk back about it as a family, probably when I was 4 is probably, I just was really high strung and was nervous about things that kids aren't usually nervous about. So I was really clingy to my parents. And would often ask just randomly, like as a kid, like, oh, do you love me? And it was kind of cute, like, oh, do you love me? Yes, we love you. If my mom was like, oh, that kid is really cute, I'd be like, oh, cuter than me, which was like, at the time, really funny, but when we would talk back about it, it was really odd that I was asking stuff like that when I was 4, like all the time. Yeah. So kind of just that need of affirmation and stuff like that. But for the most part, I was pretty happy. Growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends. I was really awkward and just didn't have very good experiences with that. And being a kid and growing up is hard, being a teenager is hard, but being a girl is really hard because we tend to isolate each other and kind of attack insecurities, and we're really good at it. So I just had a lot of problems making friends growing up. I was often picked on and told like I wasn't good enough, like you can't hang out, we just straight up don't like you. People would invite me over and then tell me to like go home after a while. They'd be like, oh, you know what, whatever. And it was Christian people that were doing that too. And I remember being really confused because all growing up I was told that, Christians love and accept each other. So kind of having someone that has also grown up in the church and is supposed to share those ideals with me are the people that are telling me like, we don't like you, you're ugly, you're not good enough. That kind of threw me off, I think, also growing up. So we moved up here, I lived in Sexsmith when I was going into 4th grade, so I was 9, I think. And the only people that I really could hang out with, we moved here in the summer, was the children of people that worked with my dad. My dad works at the Bible College in Sexsmith, and they were some of the meanest kids that I've ever met, and I think they really messed with my head. I didn't know how to act around people because I didn't know how to act in a way that people liked, and it was quite nerve-wracking, and it definitely didn't help with the whole thing. I think growing up with that kind of added on to all of the issues I had later on with mental health. That was definitely a big part of it. I was also get scared at things in a way, like if you get scared about something, you just kind of like, oh, I don't want to think about that. Like if you would see something scary on TV or like whatever, but I can't do that. I don't have like an off switch. So I would just obsess about things that would scare me and basically just like put myself in a frenzy. And it kind of got worse growing up. Junior high is really hard as a girl. It's hard for everybody, but
it's normally a really difficult place.
Yeah, being a teenager sucks. So can't really sugarcoat it. It's really difficult. So in junior high, there was this one girl that for some reason she just did not like me, and she targeted me, and she would like really come at me. She would go out of her way to make other girls kind of not hang out with me. She would lie to them and be like, oh, well, like Shalise said this about you, and so then everyone would be mad at me and not talking to me, and I wouldn't know why. She would straight up just tell me like, you're ugly, you should do like your makeup and do your hair better because I feel like it would make you look better. But then when I did start wearing makeup, they would be like, no, that looks stupid.
There's just no winning.
No winning. And just on top of that, I already had this obsessive personality about when things would be bothering me and stuff like that. And so I would just dwell on it and obsess about it, and it just eventually 8th grade was just the worst year for that. And my dad says one night I went to bed, I was upset about one of the things that one of the girls had said or done. I don't even remember what it was. And I woke up the next day and it was like I was a completely different person. So I I was very tired all the time. I didn't do a lot. I mostly, like, I would go to school and just be exhausted the entire time, and then I would come home and I wouldn't do anything. I would literally just sit in my room, and I would, just for hours, I would just sit there and be sad and tired. And then it started coming out more in anxious ways too, which there's a lot of different ways that people deal with anxiety and deal with fear, and mine was through anger. So I became very angry about like little things that would happen. Anyone that tried to talk to me, when my parents would try to talk to me, I thought they were, like, my brain was just on defense mode. I felt like everyone was out to get me. Probably the worst point that I was at during all of this, I was just so paranoid that I didn't even trust my parents. I felt like everything they were saying was just, they were trying to get inside my head and manipulate me, because I had experienced that so much growing up from the girls that would pick on me, because that's how girls fight. We try to get inside each other's heads and just like get right into the insecurities and kind of blow them up. And so I thought that everyone was out to get me. So I just would yell all the time. I took a lot of it out on my brother, because he's very quiet, and so it was really easy for me. If he would do something that annoyed me, I would just like go at him. And it really messed up our relationship for a while. And yeah, it was just really not good. And my parents almost didn't even know what to do with me, because I was either just like not eating, not sleeping, just being there as a person, or I was just like freaking out because I felt like I had to protect myself from everybody. And throughout this time, like, I didn't even want to be going to church or anything like that. Like, I knew that God was there. I never doubted that he was real. But I just kind of was like, what's the point? Like, I don't trust other Christians. I don't want to really be a part of that. Like, I believe in God, but at this point, like, it was kind of just whatever. So eventually my parents were like, okay, something is wrong. We need to get this looked at. So they took me to a doctor, and he was like, no, made me fill out this little survey. I got diagnosed with depression when I was 13, and generalized anxiety disorder when I was 14, and was put on medication, which did help a lot, and I'm still on it. I probably will be for the majority of my life, just to help keep everything a little bit chiller. That's a word. So it definitely did help, but there was just something, like, I just was so unhappy. I just hated myself. I hated the people around me. I didn't trust anybody, and just really felt alone. And it causes a lot of harmful tendencies, you know, like I wouldn't eat, and, you know, it eventually just got up to the point where I didn't even want to be alive anymore, and I was extremely suicidal when I was in junior high, to the point where my parents wouldn't leave me home by myself because they were scared that I would do something. And my parents would always be like, you need to like, trust in God or whatever, but at this point I was just like, whatever, that's stupid, like there's no point. And I don't even know, I remember one night I was just really upset, and, you know, I just obsessing about being dead, you know, like I would obsess about ways to kill myself, and I just felt this voice in my head just kind of being like, okay, like, why, like, this isn't how you need to live, like, you feel like you're alone, but you're really not. And so I decided to kind of give it one more shot. So I found a really good youth group to go to, and met some really nice Christian friends, and kind of reconnected with some girls that had grown up in my church that we never really had a chance to connect. And having Christian friends like lifting me up and stuff really made me feel like God was telling me, see, like, there are other people that are going to lift you up, and lift you up in healthy spiritual ways, and lead you to me as a way of coping. And that was really all I'd ever wanted all growing up. I just wanted a friend to kind of be there and help me and reassure me.
I think there's a lot of us that have experienced that too, right?
And I think it's hard when, as a Christian, if you can't find that in Christian communities, it's just really upsetting, I guess. Like, you just feel kind of let down, because we're told that we need to be loving and accepting. So when you can't find that, it's kind of like, well, if I can't even find that in my own church family, like, where am I really going to find that?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so, but it did really help. I got through high school, I, you know, graduated, and everything was going really well there. I had a really bad relapse the year after I graduated high school that fall, just trying to figure out kind of what I was going to be doing with my life, feeling the pressure of that. And I just, had a really other bad kind of depressive bout. I just felt like I had taken all my lifeguarding stuff, but I just didn't feel comfortable being a lifeguard, so I felt like I kind of failed my family that way because they were really pushing for it, and couldn't figure out if I wanted to go to school or if I wanted to work or what. And so I was at a really big low again, and just was like, what's the point? When you have mental illness, you wake up each day absolutely exhausted. You do your thing, you just hate it, you hate the fact that you have to just be doing anything, you're so exhausted and just nothing has a point. You go to bed that night exhausted, and then you wake up and all you think is like, I'm gonna have to do this the next day and the next day and the next day, and so you just see like no point. You're kind of just like, this is stupid, like why am I gonna be doing this? So then it got to the point where I was extremely suicidal again, and I did make an attempt on my own life. And it wasn't going the way that I expected it to. It wasn't really working out the way I wanted. I was getting so frustrated. I remember I was crying in my room. It was like 3 a.m. I was just so mad, and I just felt, again, like the first time I kind of going through this, I just felt this voice like, no, like this isn't what I want from you. I have something planned for you. You're going to make a difference. So I just remember kind of like calming down and being like, okay. And then I went to bed, which was totally bizarre. And then I told my parents about it the next day, and we discussed it as a family, and they were like, really, you just need to rely on God. Like, this is the Christian cliche, but that is what you need to be doing with this. So I reconnected. I have 3 really good Christian friends that I'm in contact with today. And they helped me out a lot. They would lift me up, they would ask me questions about it, they would check in on me and make sure I was doing well. If I was having a hard time, I refer to it as the big sad whenever I'm going through a depressive bout, because it's easier to just make fun of it than to kind of deal with it. So I would just be like, hey, like I'm really going through the big sad, and they would, they would pray for me, they would give me verses to read, they would really talk to me about that. And then I went to Cape and Ray in England last year. Yes. I had to think about that. I don't even know what year is it. And just having that change of pace, finding out there's more to the world than just sex myth, was absolutely incredible. I made some really good friends there, and I changed a lot while I was there. I would Skype my parents, and they would be like, you seem a lot happier than you've been, basically, for the last 7 years. And even the people there, like by the end of it was there for 6 months, by the end of it, people that had known me since kind of the very beginning that I was close with, they were like, no, like you've changed a lot. You're a lot happier, you have more energy, and you seem more like you've kind of found a purpose instead of just being mentally ill and being that person.
Right.
And that was awesome. And I met one girl there that is my best friend. We're super close. There's a 7-hour time difference. She lives in Germany, so that makes it a little bit hard. But I've never been blessed with a friend that so much cared about me and my mental health and just pointing me towards Jesus. And it honestly just changed my perspective. I think a lot of the times when Christians do talk about mental illness, it's kind of like, oh, and then my problems were solved, which isn't like a super, like it definitely, it's an illness, right? Like even if you are physically sick, if you have a cold or whatever, like there are ways to get around it or whatever, but it doesn't stop you from being sick again.
Yeah.
And so mental illness is like that. It's kind of a reoccurring thing that comes back. I had a pretty bad relapse this past fall that just happened. Nothing serious really happened, but just really, really struggling to like have the motivation really to do anything. And you kind of fall back into your old habits and thought patterns. But this time I felt like I had a support system that I could fall on, and that I really could rely on God and the ways He had given me to be able to cope. Whether it be my friends, whether it be leading onto scripture. And so at this point, I'm doing fairly well right now. Winter is always hard. Just the weather changes and it fluctuates a lot up here. So like a lot of the weeks are just up, down, up, down, up, down.
That makes sense.
Which is like, I don't know, you learn how to deal with it. And you know what, like I said, like I'll probably be on medication my entire life. This is something that's never going to go away. But I feel like as a Christian, I have something that not every person in the world with mental illness has, because I have the knowledge that I have a purpose and that I do have a God that's looking out for me and that loves me. And so I know that that really helps, and I want to be able to share that. It's not easy to talk about. I don't like talking about myself. It feels like I'm just complaining.
You're doing a great job.
But I never really had that growing up, and so I want, as a Christian, and I've been told by other Christians, like I've had Christians pray for me and then immediately after be like, yeah, well, I don't really believe in mental illness, which just felt really hypocritical. And and I just want to try and say that that's not right, and that mental illness is an illness, and that you can still have it as a Christian. Like I've also had people tell me, oh, you just don't believe in God enough. And it's like, well, there's a chemical imbalance in my brain. Like there's like, that's why there's medication for it, right? Like you wouldn't tell a cancer patient that like, oh, you're not trying hard enough to get better or things like that, because it is an illness. I read this one quote where it was, how come every organ in your body can get sick and get sympathy except your brain? And so, as a Christian, I just really want to reach out. And I have some verses that I really relied on during my...
That'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
You have them written down?
I do.
You're going to share them with us?
I do, I am.
Awesome.
So, it will take a little bit of flipping, but I have all of those ones highlighted. So I've given these out to people, like when I would share my story with them, and I know I had a girl, I think she was 12, and I gave her these verses, and I saw her like a year later. We had met when I was working at summer camp, and she said, I still have those verses, I read them every day. And it just shows like the power of scripture that we have, just knowing that.
This can make a difference.
Yeah, it really makes a difference. So I'm going to read some of those here. So Psalm 18:16. He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of deep waters. Psalm 34:18. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 46:5. He's talking about a river. David's talking about a river at this point, but just the way it's worded is just really resonated with me. God is within her; she will not fall. God will help her at the break of day. Psalm 71:20. Though you have made me see troubles, many and bitter, you will restore my life again. From the depths of the earth, you will again bring me up. This is one of my favorites because it felt really personal, I guess, just with feeling with, suicide and things like that. Psalm 94:17-19. Unless the Lord had given me help, I would soon have dwelt in the silence of death. When I said, my foot is slipping, your love, O Lord, supported me. When anxiety was great within me, your consolation brought joy to my soul. There's a few, but I think it's good to have.
This is incredible. Thank you.
Psalm 107:14. He brought them out of darkness and the deepest gloom and broke away their chains. Psalm 118:14. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. Proverbs 31:25-26. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She can laugh at the days to come. She speaks with wisdom, and faithful instruction is on her tongue. It's talking about wisdom in that section of Proverbs. They're talking about wisdom. They're personifying her as a person. And it really just resonated with me that that's what God wants me to be. He wants to clothe me with strength and dignity, and he wants me to be able to laugh at the days to come and not be anxious about anything. And so that really resonated with me as well. Okay, Ecclesiastes 11:10. So then, banish anxiety from your heart and cast off the troubles of your body, for youth and vigor are meaningless. Growing up, when you're young, as a youth, as a teenager, you care about what other people think of you. You care about your appearance. You care about how you look to other people. And so really, in the grand scheme of things, it sounds really just easy to say, but really they are all meaningless. Having anxiety about things that you can't control has nothing in the scheme of things, because we have a greater plan that God has for us. Not focusing on all of that stuff. Okay. Isaiah 43:2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you, and when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. Sorry. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Just God having his hand around you, I guess, in that. Lamentations 3:57-58. You came near when I called you, and you said, do not fear. You, Lord, took up my case. You redeemed my life. Jonah 2:6. We love Jonah. To the roots of the mountains I sank down. The earth barred me in forever. But you, O Lord my God, brought my life up from the pit. As you can see, a lot of the verses that I like are all about like when you're down kind of at the bottom, and then God's like, hey, I love you, I'm going to lift you up.
And so often we feel like we need something outside of us to bring us out. Right?
Yeah, and that's when people turn to other things concerning mental health, other coping mechanisms, whether that be self-harm, whether that be drugs, alcohol, things like that, because we feel like we need something outside of ourselves to save ourselves. Which medication is a good, like it does help, it is an outward force, but the root, having something at the root, which for me is my faith, is kind of that thing that makes a difference. That's what sets it apart from other ways of dealing with mental health.
And these two things can work together.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's really powerful, and then it does really help there. And then Matthew 6:34, a lot of people know this one. Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. Just kind of not dwelling on all of that. Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. John 14:1. Do not let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. That was Jesus speaking. John 14:18. I will not leave you as orphans. I will come to you. John 16:22. So with you, now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. I don't think there's only a few more, sorry. Just reading first.
And so many of these obviously speak to mental health, but also in our changing world today, and how beneficial these passages are to dwell on.
And I think that's something, especially right now while everyone's kind of isolated and alone, it's really easy, even if you don't have mental health, like it's really easy to kind of get down in what's happening. And so I think this is something like, read these. Have something to focus on that isn't just social media and just
chaos.
The chaos, God's word, let it suck you in. And then one of my personal favorites, 2 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us a spirit of timidity, but a spirit of power, of love, and self-discipline. I think that's one of the last ones there. So, last one. 1 Peter 5:7. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. So a lot of those verses have things about being just completely down and like they'll say like in a pit, in the fire, in the realm of the dead. Like a lot of them are like that, or about anxiety in itself, and just how God lifts it up and how he cares for you and stuff. So I know that helps me a lot in my thing.
Shalise, thank you so much for sharing your story. There's so many valuable lessons that we can all learn from your experience. I found it really interesting. From your experience, a lot of the low parts come from the church or from other Christians. And that's something we have to own up to. We haven't always handled this topic very well. But at the same time, you stuck with it. You stuck with God, with his word, and with other believers. And that also was one of the biggest factors that helped you move to where you are today. Yeah. And it makes me sad because not everyone is able to do that. A lot of people turn away from the church in this time, which I think is so heartbreaking, because as the church we should not be the reason that someone would turn away. But I'm also hoping that, like, not through just me sharing, but like any Christian with mental illness that has been able to come back and through the church, or even just through their relationship with Jesus, that we can still help those people and call them back. And that's why we're having these conversations, because we recognize that it hasn't always been handled the best in the church, and we want to correct that. We want to take steps forward and help people wherever they're at to grow.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to take one thing away from what Shalise has shared with us, have a support system that you can text or reach out to. And how did you word it? Your sad days?
Oh, the big sad.
The big sad.
You can take that, you can use it.
Yeah, and have people praying for you and lifting you up. And it doesn't have to be within mental health either. Just on
Just anything.
if you're alone in isolation or whatever it might be, especially in these days, have somebody that you can reach out to is really important.
Especially those of you in grade 12. I know a lot of people are really disappointed
Oh,
with just
absolutely.
school
Yeah.
ending. And I know I know a lot of people that have told me just how devastated they are with that. Please have that support system. I know a lot of you youth have like contacted me in the past and like asked me questions or like reached out. Do that. Reach out to your leaders. Like that's what we're here for. We want to be able to be that. I never had that when I was your age, and that was something that I think really would have helped in the grand scheme of things and maybe could change some things. So please reach out. I want to be that for you guys. I know the other leaders do too. They want to kind of be that support system.
Yeah, we've been telling you guys to submit your questions to us, and please still do that. You can also direct questions towards Shalise. You can still send them through us, and we will get Shalise back to help us answer any of these questions as well. Anything else you want to add?
Nope.
Shalise, final
thank you.
final thoughts. Just one more thing. Do you have any final practical tips to give us, especially while people are being less social, spending more time at home by themselves?
So obviously, yes, we have our spiritual side, our relationship side with Jesus, but also just in life, He's given us other like things that we can do to kind of help cope and not just be sad and alone and dwell on everything that's going on. So one thing that I would do is obviously it's really hard, you do have to just take the initiative and do it, but I would try to learn one new thing a day. Like I would try to learn a song, or I like to do arts and crafts and things, so I would try to learn a new bracelet to make. I would try to learn a new painting technique, kind of giving stuff like that, learn like one chord on an instrument, just give yourself something to work on, so you're not just sitting around doing nothing. And then finding something to do that isn't just like I love Netflix, I love being on my phone, I love YouTube, I love it. But also making sure that I'm doing other things, like I like to paint, I like to draw, I like to read. So setting aside a certain amount of time a day where I'm gonna be like, hey, I'm just gonna do these things. Finding something you enjoy. Even though we're isolated, like I know a lot of people are really active, I'm not that, don't care about sports. I look dumb when I run, like I don't even like being active, but you can still be active, like you can still go outside, like, still try your best even with the situation that we have, using what's available to you, making sure you're doing things that you enjoy, and talking to people. The one thing I guess that's different now than in the past is that because we have social media, like we are really connected. So you can still reach out to your friends and you can still talk to them.
Absolutely.
I know I've been doing a lot of that with even like my coworkers and stuff, just like checking in on everybody and having that sense of community. It really makes you feel less isolated. I guess.
Yeah. Shalise, it's been awesome. Thank you for taking the time to share your story with us. All of those verses that she shared, we'll post them in the comments, or also check us out at GPAC Youth on Instagram, and we'll be posting those throughout the week. Just something more that we can be thinking about. Thanks, Shalise.
Oh.